Welcome to another episode of Conduct Detrimental. This week I'm joined by two special guests, Stephanie Weissenberger and the IP professor, Tony Iliakostas. New York Law School represent. What's up, gang?
Yeah, we got a good New York Law School club going here.
Yeah. Looks like it's 2-1, Dan. New York Law School over Fordham.
I teach at New York Law School, so this is
Okay,
It doesn't count. Alum power.
But alum. I mean, I guess you can be like an honorable New York Law School alum.
It's funny though, because I have a somewhat allegiance to Dan because he's a Fordham grad like myself, except I was undergrad. So I feel like I'm the mediator among this crowd, you know?
Okay.
Well, listen, we're all part of the New York Law School sports law family. How about that? For our listeners, if you haven't gotten the trend this past couple of weeks, what we've been trying to do is have a very serious episode on the first episode of the week. And then this second episode, we can go in any number of directions. So you guys asked, we delivered. I have been getting tagged in certain stories that I wouldn't normally cover in a traditional episode with Dan. But since we've been going 2 episodes a week, we do have time to cover some, we'll say, interesting sports law stories. So last episode, I promised 1 sport that we have never covered before. How about 2? Okay, so here's the lineup for today. We talk about, first, a very interesting case in the intellectual property sphere. That is the WWE 2K controversy regarding Randy Orton's tattoos. So if you're a fan of all things intellectual property, it is interesting. It's a case about a tattoo artist claiming control over tattoos that she did on a wrestler. So very interesting case in the intellectual property realm. Next, we have 2 cheating scandals, sagas, that have picked up significant traction. First, we're going to go to the chess world. We did get some tags on Twitter for this one. It is a case between 2 very big mega powers in chess, and we'll say unique allegations of cheating. We'll leave it at that for now. Tony, I see you're laughing, but try to keep it to yourself. And then we're going to go to the fishing world. People have seen the video that's now going viral of somebody catching fish at a very big fishing tournament. We have a special interview on that front. Cj Hansen is a personal friend of Stephanie's. He's a professional fisher out of Massachusetts. We're going to bring him in to talk about how somebody putting weights in a fish, how that happens, or the fallout from that end. And then last but not least, guys, a little bit of football. Tom Brady and Giselle hiring divorce lawyers. We're going to go there. It is a legal topic. We do have to cover it. Okay, guys, I think that's it. Listen, it's a good lineup, right? We got some good topics.
Really good. Super sexy.
Super sexy topic.
But in the world of sports law, I say it all the time. We do not pick the topics. They're intersections of sports and law. We got to cover it, rules, regulations, even divorces between the GOAT and maybe the GOAT of a different world. But okay, let's get started. Tony, this one, when I saw it, I thought of you immediately. Randy Orton, one of the top professional wrestlers. He's a 3rd-generation wrestler. He's one of the top guys in the sport. You know Randy Orton, maybe you don't know the name. You know the RKO out of nowhere viral meme. If anyone doesn't know what an RKO is, kind of like the Stone Cold Stunner, except kind of like laying on your back. But Randy Orton's like one of the more viral wrestlers, one of the more well-known wrestlers. If you watch him, he's got sleeves across both of his arms and some very unique tattoos. So he's involved in a very unique intellectual property case that just reached resolution. So Tony, you are the IP professor. Stephanie, you are an IP attorney. I feel like we got the right people to deal with the story. But Tony, kick us off. What's going on there?
So this was a very unique story that kind of came out earlier this week, in Illinois, where a jury ruled that a tattoo artist who had designed all the tattoos that Dan just referenced that are attributed to Randy Orton was in fact entitled to damages related to copyright infringement because the creators of the WWE 2K series, Catherine Alexander, who is the tattoo artist, they portrayed her tattoos that were on the CGI rendition of Randy Orton in the video game. Of course, 2K's position, which is the parent company, I believe Take-Two is the parent company, their position was that this was de minimis use, everything satisfied fair use, nothing really in the realm of it being infringement, mainly because the tattoo was part of Randy Orton's identity. Well, jury disagreed with that assessment, awarded just short of $4,000 in damages to Catherine Alexander, so a very small amount, but this could have an extremely lasting impact. And Steph, I know that we've had our own collaborations in the past on, my Instagram account talking about, the fair use matter, but this is just yet another legal story that we have where fair use is, the needle for fair use is slowly shifting away from it being an objective assessment to more of a subjective assessment. And I think that this could actually have really monumental circumstances down the road when it comes to assessing fair use.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I thought one thing that was interesting, and my first initial thought was, how much effect did they have on the sales of the game? Were people really buying this game just because Orton had these tattoos on his body and they wanted to see the artist's work? No. And I know that the jury determined that there really was no effect on the sales of the game, which then ultimately prevented him from receiving, a cut of the actual game's profits, but still entitled him to, I believe it was $3,750 in damages for the use of the tattoos. But, I kind of agree that she's entitled to something, but you can't have it all. You can't have a cut of the profit of the game just because, your tattoos happen to have been on this wrestler and they happen to be in this game because the wrestler's identity is in the game. I don't think, it really makes sense for her to get any more than what she got.
So here's the thing. I mean, to answer that particular question, to some extent, right, people purchase games because they want the video games to be realistic and lifelike. So if you look at it, Randy Orton, right, if the guy didn't have any tattoos, that would be kind of odd, right? Same, you could talk about Roman Reigns, who's another, one of the big guys, tons of tattoos. He's got more of the Rock tribal tattoos. It's maybe, I'm not sure if there's a tattoo case that's going to pop up, but yeah, there is some ability to have like a realistic game that people are buying it. But then again, I don't have any tattoos. I negotiate deals for my workplace. I look at people giving up their IP rights when they're signing a particular contract. Maybe that's a new practice that people are going to have. If you are a celebrity and you go into a tattoo shop and you get a tattoo, right, and you're like a basketball player or you're a wrestler, do you have to have somebody sign a release when you get a tattoo? It's a bizarre concept, but Tony, isn't that the precedent that's set here, that people have to be mindful that a case like this can come up and it's not so clear who owns it?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And I think also you have to take into consideration the artwork itself for a tattoo. Is it even original under the context of copyright law to even warrant getting copyright protection? In the case of Randy Orton, he has the skulls on one arm. He has kind of that weird thorny type design on the back of his neck. So these are very intricate and specific designs that, generally speaking, they can be protected in the context of copyright law. That said, though, I think I want to challenge listeners and play a little bit of this exercise with me. If you think of The Rock, what do you think of? Naturally, you think of, obviously, of the jabroni look to it and the flexing, but mainly we think of the bull tattoo that he has on his arm. If you think of Mike Tyson, what do you think of? Aside from his lisp, it's naturally going to be the face tattoo. What I'm indicating is that these assets, which are also tattoos associated with these athletes, these iconic persons, these tattoos are part of their identity and their likeness. And I think we're creeping into this very unique territory where is something like a tattoo something that should be protected under the realm of copyright law, or does the copyright artist in such a way forfeit the copyright and almost hand the keys over to the athlete or the famous person, and that person uses that tattoo as part of their name, image, and likeness, their personality rights? There's an iconic case that has gone down in the 80s, I think even the 90s, Midler versus Ford. Fantastic case, one of my favorite personality rights cases that I teach my students. Midler versus Ford dealt with whether or not basically somebody who sounded a lot like Bette Midler, if her mimicking of Do You Want to Dance qualified as personality right infringement, when I think it was Ford through Lincoln Mercury had originally contacted Bette Midler to use her song. She denied, and then they hired her background singer to reenact the song. And the court at Seventh Circuit ruled that was, in every sense of the word, a violation of personality rights because her voice was just much of a part of her unique identity as the way she looked, her name, and everything else. So I think the same regard should definitely be given when we're talking about tattoos, because it is, each tattoo in some way is unique to each personality. And so again, where do we draw the line between it being an enforceable copyright versus it being personality right driven?
I completely agree. And as someone who does have a tattoo or two, I can say I have never signed anything that says the tattoo artist owns the copywriter owns the intellectual property rights as soon as it is on my body. And
Yeah, exactly.
it actually does make me think too, if that were a thing, it would almost be as if the tattoo artist owned a piece of your body once it's actually on your body, which, privacy rights, what about
Exactly.
that comes in. So it is an interesting case for sure, because of just what tattoos really are. They're art, but it's on someone else's body.
I'm going to say this. If someone had to guess who had the tattoo between the three of us, I mean, I would have said Tony would have a giant tattoo of Spider-Man on his back.
Oh my God.
But Stephanie, you've outed yourself. So congratulations. Tony, you can show us that Spider-Man tattoo later.
That's for Conduct Detrimental Unleashed. That's
Ooh,
for the
that sounds inappropriate. But I think Stephanie, you raised some great points. Tony, I think is the future of getting tattoos, right? Assumption of the risk. You got to deal with it head on. So if you're a lawyer and you're getting a tattoo, listen, you cannot say that you do not know that there are potential legal issues involved. So
exactly.
Can of worms, but that's where we are.
Luckily, I'm not an athlete or celebrity, so I don't have to worry about this.
So that'll put a pin on the IP discussion for now. A reminder that our podcast is sponsored by Themis Bar Review. Last episode, I congratulated Taryn Sharma on passing the bar using Themis, but I forgot to do something. Forgot to congratulate Emily Costanzo for also passing the bar using Themis Bar Review. So yes, bar passers come in all shapes and sizes, men, women, everyone's using Themis, everyone's passing the bar. It is fantastic. So yes, a big congrats to all of our Conduct Detrimental team members that have passed and our audience members that used Themis. So if you are interested in learning more about Themis, head to themisbar.com/condetrimental. So this controversy will take us to a place that sports law, at least on this show, has never been before. That is chess. During the pandemic, I guess the chess saw a record number of users. I saw some stat that if chess was a religion, it would be the third largest religion in the world. So there's a lot of people playing chess. This controversy is an interesting one. Between the number one chess player in the world, maybe I think he's known as maybe the greatest chess player of all time. So one of the GOATs by the name of Magnus Carlsen. He had like a 50-match win streak. He's very decorated, wins all these awards, right? He's the greatest. And all of a sudden, he gets upset in a kind of an inconspicuous tournament by this guy by the name of Hans Niemann. So people thought it was a little weird. It was either like one of the biggest upsets of all time, like Buster Douglas, Mike Tyson, status, or like, I don't know, the Appalachian State in Michigan, or something very odd was happening. So right now we have a very big cheating scandal between this guy, Magnus Carlsen, this guy, Hans Niemann. And the question is, whether and to what extent Hans Niemann may have been using artificial intelligence to help him win a live tournament. So it wasn't, a Zoom tournament and someone was opening up chess.com in one window and then, using some cheating app in another. Somehow there was an allegation that this person was cheating live. So I'm not going to get into the messy part of the cheating stuff yet. But Tony, Steph, does anybody want to take a first impressions of this cheating scandal? Because I do have a couple.
For one, I'm just going to say that Beth Harmon from the Queen's Gambit would never cheat in chess.
Probably would not, no. I guess the only word I can kind of characterize this whole story is with the word bizarre.
Yeah.
You often hear of cheating with like performance enhancing drugs in football and basketball and baseball for sure. But chess, I guess it just goes to show you that there is an ultra competitive culture that does exist in that world. And, certainly there are very gifted chess players around the world. I mean, Magnus Carlsen has definitely proven himself to be one of the premier talents, almost like very obviously a very tame version of Bobby Fischer, but, just gifted nonetheless. And, here we are with Hans Niemann really showcasing that there is vulnerability in the sport. And I think very crafty use of AI to kind of make this possible, I think shows a very glaring loophole. And I think more likely than not, you're probably going to see regulations going forward on this front.
Here's my understanding. And I used to play chess when I was very young, obviously nowhere close to a high level like these guys. But even the greatest human beings that play chess, be it Hans Niemann or Magnus Carlsen, there's 100 free computer applications that could just destroy them. And you can, in some sense, I guess, act like a computer for 5 or 10 moves. But when people are analyzing this guy Hans Niemann moveset in that particular game against Magnus Carlsen, they're saying that it's almost impossible to act like a computer would for like 40 consecutive moves. And the other part, which I just think is worth interesting story here, I guess the white chess piece moves first, the black chess piece moves second. So it wasn't just that Hans Niemann upset the number one guy in the world that had won 50 consecutive matches. He did it by going second, which I guess in chess is almost impossible. So
Yeah.
part of the investigation here in the Wall Street Journal covered this earlier this week, essentially that, chess.com, if you play games online, there's a little bit of an easier way to check if your moves are resembling that of a computer. So in subsequent interviews, Hans Niemann has admitted to cheating, I think, twice when he was younger. And then chess.com, who I guess is like the all-knowing body in all of this, they go, actually, Hans Niemann, you have cheated over 100 times according to our research. And their research is comparing human moves to what a computer moves would be. And, I guess he's allegedly cheated in events involving money. So there's this big debate as to whether or not Hans Niemann cheated. So, right, this saga is brewing and brewing and brewing. And then these two matched up in a subsequent tournament. So Mr. Famous Magnus Carlsen, he posts some weird thing online, like, the version of like, I'm just here so I don't get fined, like the Marshawn Lynch stuff, like doesn't want to say anything. He retires after one move and they were, competing against one another. So he's making a statement like, I'm not competing against this guy until this thing is sussed out. So I guess there have been cheating incidents in chess where someone had like a buzzer in their shoe. There is an allegation here. If someone is cheating live and in person, there's an allegation, right, that someone is using a buzzer in their shoe. Somebody sent me an article about a cheating scandal in poker right now about a buzzing chair. The allegation here, there's been no evidence, nothing confirmed or otherwise, but the allegation here, if you go on the dark web of Reddit, the allegation is that something is being inserted into Mr. Hans Niemann from the rear. I'll leave it at that. And there are vibrations being done inside his person, trying to alert him as to when to move and what would be the optimal move. So I guess we're in 2022. That is what's going on. Again, it's kind of a divisive allegation from amongst the chess community, because there are people saying Magnus Carlsen, the fact that he's essentially accusing Hans Niemann of cheating is just sour grapes. Maybe he just got upset by a better player. And then there's other people saying, like, it's one thing to get upset, but Hans Niemann has apparently been cheating on chess.com. He doesn't have the profile and the trajectory of someone that should ever be able to beat someone like Magnus Carlsen. In the way that moveset was designed, that nobody can resemble a computer for 40 moves, maybe 10 moves, but not for 40 moves. So now you have allegations so crazy, like, I guess you have to wand people and you have to put people through a metal detector at this point. But that's this, right? I'm going to be the first to admit I had never heard of Magnus Carlsen before this. So I guess in the world, like, a cheating scandal has more widespread, notoriety than like the Grandmaster chess champion, maybe the greatest of all time. I only know about him through the cheating scandal and not the fact that he's maybe the greatest chess champion of all time. Guys, any comments on where we're at as an internet society, that the rampant speculation is of a device being inserted inside of his person?
A very crafty argument, that's for sure. It almost reminds me, if anybody's interested, there's actually I would imagine it's on YouTube, or you could find it when it's in a not pirated fashion, but there is a documentary story that was done, I believe, on BBC about this one time where there was a contestant on Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, the UK version, who basically made his way through all the whole way, got £1 million on Who Wants to Be a Millionaire UK, did use lifelines, but it was found upon replay that he was actually getting signals from somebody coughing in the audience for certain answers. And essentially, if the audience member coughed, that was the indication that that was the right answer. But he had to read the answer out loud repeatedly. And then if the audience member coughed and he heard it, he knew that that was the answer. I thought that was fascinating. So something that rhymes with, we'll say like this, canal beads without the C. I think that that's just a very, very unique way. I mean, listen, props for the creativity, but hey, wow, this is insane.
From the chess world to the competitive fishing world. I mentioned in our group chat that someone had tagged us in this post and wanted us to cover the fishing story. And obviously the video going around, making its waves on ESPN and various different channels is of somebody winning a fishing tournament and apparently winning a couple hundreds of thousands of dollars over the past couple of years. Well, this person's always been accused of cheating. The fishing director in this particular incident, I think he saw maybe a bulge coming from one of these fish that somebody caught. And guy, it's kind of a gory video. If you're, on the PETA side, I would tell you not to watch the video, which, a little disturbing, but it is what it is. They cut open a fish and they saw a weight inside a fish. I think they found about 8 pounds in weight associated or within various fish that this individual caught. So if you're doing a competitive fishing, I guess you know that the weight of the fish or the weight of the collective group of fish is going to depend if you finish in first, second, third, or you don't make any money. So the allegation is that a certain individual has been cheating for years. And then literally, right, we're talking about how you could find proof in a chess cheating scandal. Literally, like the proof was in the fish. They cut the weight out. So we were debating if we were going to cover this, how we were going to cover this. And I reached out to our core team and I said, guys, have any ideas? And Steph, you reached out and you're like, I have a friend. He's the greatest fisherman, the number one ranked fisherman in the entire state of Massachusetts. I'm not sure if he's actually ranked number one, but you said you had a friend, Cj Hansen. So you had an interview with him. So Steph, what did you learn from Cj? And are we going to hear from Cj? Do you have the interview for us?
Oh, yeah. We're going to hear from Captain Cj of Gloucester, Massachusetts. He runs a sport fishing fleet. He's already won several big tuna championships this year. He is currently actually out on the water on a charter doing some more fishing right now. So we had to record this a few days ago to accommodate, obviously, his hardcore fishing schedule. And, you know, I had no idea about competitive fishing at all, to be honest. And I was very, very fascinated by this conversation, mostly because there's cheating constantly in this. He's experienced it in competitions before. And the funniest part was that, you know, Chase Kaminsky and Jake Runyon, who are the two guys who cheated in this walleye tournament, according to CJ, you know, they kind of were rookies when it came to cheating. They kind of used the worst possible way to do it. And so, you know, there's a lot of rules involved in competitive fishing when it comes to when they weigh the fish, how they weigh the fish, how many fish they're even allowed to actually catch and kill. And so, you know, it was an interesting conversation. And I'm sure a lot of people may be doing some deep dives into fishing after this episode to maybe see if they can get involved, because it sounds pretty fun.
I'll take your word for it. I've never been fishing in my life, but listen, I know a good cheating story and sports law story where there is one. So without further ado, let us kick it over to your conversation with Captain Cj Hansen.
All right. So I have Captain Cj Hansen here. He runs a sport fishing fleet in Gloucester, Massachusetts. And we definitely wanted to have him on to share his perspective on fishing tournaments, considering the uproar that's happened from this Lake Erie Walleye Trail Championship tournament, where two people were accused of cheating. And according to the video, it definitely looks like there was cheating that happened. So CJ, welcome to the show. We're happy to have you on.
Thank you for having me.
I guess we'll get into it right away. A little bit of background. I mean, I know you saw the video. I'm sure plenty of our listeners saw the video. And if you haven't yet, you should definitely check it out because it's pretty crazy to see. But essentially, Lake Erie Walleye Trail Championship this past weekend, cheating scandal. Chase Kaminsky and Jake Runyon appeared to be the winners of the tournament until event organizers decided they needed to cut open their fish, which ultimately then revealed several lead weights and fish fillets stuffed inside their fish so that they would have the heaviest catch. What was your initial reaction on all of this, CJ?
My initial reaction was probably mostly that I was surprised that in 2022, with all the technology and stuff, that people would try to cheat that way. I've seen like the fillets that those guys use. That's kind of like the new modern way that you'll catch people cheating. So basically, anytime those tournaments have like a winner, if you're in contention, they'll take a scanner and a metal detector and check the bellies of fish to make sure you didn't stick weights in there, any other objects. I do tuna tournaments. They'll scan the whole body, make sure you didn't stick extra harpoon pieces in there, etc. But yeah, overall, I was just surprised. I mean, I hear about cheating all the time, but that's a pretty bold way to try to go about it in this day and age.
Yeah, I was trying to understand, I guess, when exactly could they have even stuffed these weights and the fillets into the fish? Would it be on the boat when they're kind of coming back for the weigh-in, or when exactly could that even happen without someone noticing?
Yeah, I would think that it would happen like right as they catch them, just stuffing it. I know sometimes guys will use objects, like some guys will use like a plunger, like a toilet plunger, a bigger fish, and push weights and fillets and stuff down their throat. Walleye aren't quite big enough for that, but I'm sure if you use something proportionate to the size of their mouth and their throat to push it down there, guys will use like a Gatorade bottle or like a water bottle and just lodge objects down there as soon as they catch them.
Yeah, and I know that the way that they even, I guess, started looking into this cheating scandal was because when they initially went to their weigh-in, a fish that was supposed to weigh 4 pounds ended up weighing 8 pounds. And then the collective weight of all of these fish ultimately weighed 35 pounds, which was significantly higher than the second place winner. I guess my question would be, going back to what you said with all the technology, how could they miss that? And what were the repercussions that then, when they have these cheating scandals, do they immediately go and cut the fish open like they did in this case? What's kind of the next steps when there's a suspicion of cheating?
So most of the time, I'd start off by saying this, that 99% of guys that fish in tournaments are, for the most part, blue collar guys who are there to fish hard and they follow the rules. And I believe I read that those guys actually failed the polygraph test in a previous test and had previous tournament had to forfeit their prize. So It's kind of like maybe not a full like blackball community, but it's definitely once you mess up and you screw some people over, you're going to be kind of looked at a little bit differently. I think there was some speculation on those guys previously. So the tournament director, which we call it the weighmaster, who it's one guy who's got no skin in any fight as far as what boats are going to win. He's just the director of the tournament. They're supposed to inspect every fish, as far as that's what they do for tuna. I believe they do for bass and walleye too. He looks at every fish that goes on the scale, make sure it's not mutilated in any way. And I believe in the previous tournament, that same weighmaster caught wind of that they failed. So when he saw the difference, like you were alluding to, that a fish that a normal fisherman would say that's a 4 or 5 pound walleye, when they're weighing in at 7, 8, 9, 10 pounds, I think he then took his hand and physically rubbed it over the stomach of the fish, felt it there. And at that point, I think he took action and cut one open, saw there was a couple lead weights and went through his whole bag of fish. And to have a weight that's that much off is crazy. I mean, I could look at a fish on someone else's boat from 50 feet away and tell you that tuna is within 50 to 100 pounds of my guess, but that'd be like a tuna being 400 or 500 pounds more than like what it should weigh. So it's to the point where it's almost just bad cheating because it's just so obvious.
Yeah, they definitely need to, maybe stop cheating then, for sure.
Yeah.
But I mean, especially considering what it sounds like, their 35 pounds of fish definitely doesn't match up to what you catch in tuna. So maybe they need to look elsewhere. But going back to kind of the logistics of the tournament, how do these fishing tournaments even work? Do they take place kind of all over one single day, a weekend? Does it vary? How long are you out there?
It varies. I think their format sounds like it's pretty similar to ours, where you'll have like one first day where it's like they call it the captain's meeting, and all the captains from each boat show up. They go through the rules, the regulations, the size, and usually it's like local law will supply like a lot of those rules. So if they say, one angler can only have 2 or 3 fish per day, like the rules, even though you're in a tournament, you have to abide by those rules. So for tuna, for us, it's only 1 per day. So we can only take 1 tuna, bring that in away. You can't stay there and get several. But most tournaments are like 2 to 3 days, because especially this time of year, you have weather days. You have days where the wind's too strong or it's too rainy or thunder and lightning, and they'll call it like a weather day. We go discretionary. So if you have a big boat, like we have a big boat, we can almost fish through anything where some smaller boats can't. But usually most well-run tournaments are 2 to 3 days, a weekend, Friday to Sunday, or like a Friday through Monday type thing, where, a lot of people don't have to take off other work days to fish in it. That's a pretty standard format.
And then how does the prize money work? I know that I read that these people had in the past year won over $300,000 in fishing boats and cash prizes over different tournaments. And then this one was, I think the prize was around $30,000 or something like that. Is it kind of just based on the fees that you have to pay to get into the tournament, or where does the prize money come from?
Yeah, so a lot of it's fees. So I'm not sure what their entry. I saw that theirs was 30,000. Some of ours are, and what's pretty standard is like the amount of boats. So it'll be like, $5,000 per boat, and that then you have sponsors. Like, I don't know if you've heard of like Costa Del Mar sunglasses, or like Maui Gym, Anheuser-Busch products like Bud Light, Budweiser will sponsor. New England's big on like Sam Adams spears. So like those guys want to have like those logos there. So they'll say like, we'll give 10,000 towards the first place prize if you only serve like Anheuser-Busch products at that event. So that's like the pots get generated. I'm sure in a tournament like that, there's fishing companies, there's lure companies, rod reels that want their sign on like the leaderboard or whatever. And they'll say, all right, well, if you put our name in the front of all the pictures and on the leaderboard and all this stuff, we'll throw another 20,000 onto like the total winning. So like the first, second, third place all get like a piece of the prize.
Gotcha. Okay. Very interesting. And I know you also said that this isn't the first time that you've heard of cheating, and that in the past tournaments that you've been in, you've seen it with your own eyes, or at least some assumptions about it. Can you tell us a little more about?
Last year, I was on the other end of it. Last September, we were in a tuna tournament in Boston, and we actually caught a fish that was very similar situation, except they didn't stuff their fish. So in our tournaments, because we sell these fish, we ship them to Japan. We have to gut them and bleed them right away and get all that stuff out of them, because the longer you leave the guts and the blood inside of them, the quicker that they'll start to rot. Mm-hmm. So we take all the guts out right away, flush them out, fill them with ice. And then when you get to the dock in these tournaments, there's supposed to be a weighmaster there that inspects the fish, says, you know, there's a universal standard of a gutted fish, as we call it, field dressed. And that's like what you turn your fish into for the tournament to be weighed. We actually had a boat who the captain of the boat was on the board of directors for this tournament the previous year. So we had a fish that was 110 inches that weighed like 630 pounds. And they had a fish that was 102 inches, but weighed like 634 pounds. So our fish was 8 inches bigger, and they were saying their fish was still 2 pounds heavier. I was out fishing when their fish got weighed in, you know, catching the one that we ended up getting. And then we got back to the dock and weighed our fish. And I'm like, that's really weird. Our fish was 110 inches. And you can have smaller fish by a couple inches way more than bigger ones based on like fat content, all that stuff. But come to find out, that fish that we were going up against never got gutted. They just cut one side of their gills off, which is like a 2-pound piece. And they never pulled out the 70, 80, all the way up to like 100 pounds of guts and blood that are inside of them.
Wow.
And they just made it appear from the outside that they did. And actually, I'm not a huge social media guy, but I was like going through, like, I was like, I want to see pictures of this fish, because they post every picture on social media and they promote it and they want to grow the tournament and sponsors. So I went, and they had like a full 5-minute video attached to their Instagram link on the tournament. And I went on there and I took a bunch of screenshots showing like when they were hoisting the fish up, that I could see all the guts inside of it. And after the tournament was over, it was actually like almost a $20,000 swing from us. We got third place and they got second. And then we made an official appeal on it and kind of proved that those guys had some home cooking with it. And that like the guy who was on the board of directors the year before kind of had a buddy relationship with the weighmaster, and they didn't look at their fish and inspect it the same way that they did ours. And then not only did they not do that with ours, but then they took out additional meat and stuff that wasn't appropriate from the takeout out of ours, because they knew how close it was. So we ended up going to like a board of directors meeting and appeal it, and basically had to threaten to get lawyers, all this other stuff. And ultimately the tournament did the right thing, and they were like, you know, it's pretty cut and dry what went on here. And they banned that other boat from the tournament, and they gave us the second place, you know, finish. And it was huge. It was almost $20,000 swing for us.
Wow. And so I guess my question would be, when they find out that someone cheated, they disqualify them from the tournament. They might ban them from that tournament, but they can still, I guess, enter into other tournaments, kind of similar to these guys did. Yeah.
So for us, we actually had another tournament this year where someone else cheated and got caught by the tournament, and I showed you the same tournament a year later. But they got caught. They caught one fish and they stayed there and tried to catch one that was bigger. So your options are, when you catch one, so tuna, I was saying, was one fish a day is what the federal government allows us to catch right now. So you have to follow those rules. So if you catch a fish, it could be big enough to keep and sell and weigh in. But like for us, there's been times where we catch them and I'm like, I know the other boats in this tournament are good boats. I know there's big fish around. Let's revive this one and release it, which is perfectly legal. You just can't kill a second fish. So these guys kill the fish, saw it, brought it up, or like, oh, that's a good one, but I think there's bigger ones around. They had it tied off to the side of their boat by the tail. It was dead. And then they kept fishing and they caught another fish right in front of another boat. They killed both of them. They tied one to a lobster pot. They were going to come back and get it the next day. And they ended up getting caught, and the federal government is involved. And I don't know exactly what's happening, but I believe that the captain's losing his captain's license, and the boat possibly might be seized, and you lose your permit for like years to come. And they definitely won't be welcome in other tournaments, that's for sure.
Are there people monitoring as you're out there fishing, or is it kind of just, if you happen to be by another boat and you see something, then you would say something, or are there, people from the tournament directors or whatever who are kind of, sailing around just to make sure that everything is being followed?
I think in those tournaments that there's more of that in like the freshwater walleye tournaments. I think there's a lot of like, because you're fishing in a more condensed area. I mean, Lake Erie's huge, but
Right.
I'm assuming those guys are fishing in one area. The ocean where we fish is so spread out. Like I'm sometimes fishing 100 miles plus from another boat that's in the tournament. I personally kind of believe in karma. So if I see someone doing something wrong, I really don't rat on them. I just kind of hope that something doesn't go their way as far as like when they get to the scales, it doesn't work out or their fish is lighter. But I don't like getting involved in other people's business and just try to win it the right way on merit. But sometimes it's hard not to like say something. If you like, we had to call that boat out because our fish was just significantly bigger and we weren't really calling them out, more calling the tournament out. But yeah, some tournaments they have a committee boat that'll go around when they kind of know where a bunch of guys are fishing. They'll pull up and interview you and ask you. But when you're on your way in, the time restrictions are huge. So we've pushed it real close to the time limit sometimes, and the committee boat will come behind you with a camera and match your speed and watch you cross the finish line like to the second. They have a time stamp of like when you cross and that kind of whole thing. Yeah. Wow. So it's a lot. There's a lot to it. It's more than just like catching big fish.
Right. Yeah. No, clearly there is. I guess what changes do you think I know you mentioned that now like they scan some of the fishes, or at least in the tournaments that you're in. Are there any other changes that you think should be implemented in these tournaments just to protect the integrity of them?
I think you just need consistency. I think that most of the time they do a really good job of policing it. And like I said, 99% of the boats that go fish are going to follow the rules. They're going to do it appropriately. They're going to win it or lose it on merit, or, sometimes you just have a bad day and you don't catch them. But as far as like monitoring it, I think they need to be consistent. I think every tournament with the prize over like 25 grand, the winning boat needs to have a polygraph, because there's so many little things that you could do to cheat. You could start fishing early. You could, go past the time. We have like a lines in, a lines out rule. So like taking videos of like a time stamp of like your GPS to show that you're not, and then like panning it out onto your boat to show that you're not actively fishing then. And then like I think the metal detector is huge. And then I think lastly, physically being there, seeing the fish like this guy did, touching their organs and all that stuff and making sure there's no funny business. We don't see that aspect of it too much because our fish are all gutted, but there are a few tuna tournaments that are run where you leave them completely intact, which I don't really agree with, because some guys will take an entire bluefish which are 15 pounds and stuff them down the fish, but it's hard to catch someone on that because that's what tuna do eat. So it looks natural when there's a whole bluefish inside of their belly, and then their stomach acid still alive, so it will like break it down. So you could gut that fish and it would look legit. But I think the way to get rid of that is just to have every fish gutted. And then maybe in these tournaments too, if these guys are harvesting those fish to eat them, just do a gutted weight, take all the guts out of them and just weigh whole, fish minus their guts.
Yeah, no, that definitely makes sense. And it sounds like there's a lot more that goes into this than at least I was aware of. And I'm sure a lot of people were aware of. It really, it takes a lot to catch these fish and to really win these tournaments for sure.
I just think it takes a lot more work to cheat, and then you look over your shoulder for the rest of your life if you win hundreds of thousands of dollars, rather than if you just go out there and follow the rules. Like I've probably fished 10 tournaments in the last 2 years, and we've placed in 6 or 7 of the tournaments, and the 3 that we didn't, it's like, whatever, we're going to get the next one. But I never like lead you to be like, how can we cheat? It's like I like winning because I know that we fish the hardest and put our time, and I would not even feel comfortable like taking money that we didn't earn. But I think that's how a lot of guys feel. But how it goes. There's always one in every crowd.
What would your reaction be if you were there at this Lake Erie tournament and you were standing right next to the tournament director as he was pulling out all these lead weights and fish
I think
fillets?
if that in our crowd, it'd be a little bit more physical than those guys. It to be more verbal. Up here, it tends to get a little bit more physical. So I don't think there's any saying what would happen. It would just depend on how quickly these guys could get out of there or not.
Exactly. So I guess they should run as fast as they can.
Yeah, definitely.
Awesome. Well, I guess that's all we have for you. Thank you so much for joining us, and good luck. I can't wait to see many more big tunas caught and many more tournament wins for you. That's that karma. Let's get an 8th win.
Thank you, Stephanie.
Thanks. Talk to you soon.
All right, bye.
So that was Captain Cj Hansen. The only thing that I think we should probably mention is that the Ohio Department of Natural Resources collected evidence from this incident, and they are preparing a report for the prosecutor's office. So this matter is still under investigation. We may have some more updates in the future, but if you want to see some pictures of massive big tuna caught by CJ and all of his championships, you can follow him on Instagram at Cj Hansen, Hanson 24 on Instagram. Great conversation. Cheaters, there's no place in the world for them, whether it's in fishing or chess.
Yeah, I mean, Steph, that was fantastic. We should do more of these interviews of our Conduct Detrimental contributors going out and about and securing some good interviews for the pod, because I don't know, there's never a shortage seemingly of sports law content. So love to see it. I think what's interesting here, like, we talked earlier about the Hans Niemann Magnus Carlsen thing. It's like, I imagine this controversy in chess has been heating up for a while. I alluded to like this shoe buzzer scandal, and there's like another poker chair scandal. But like, sometimes you can catch someone directly in the act. But like, I think why this video went viral is literally like, you caught the guy cheating red-handed, and the guy is standing there like motionless, like he doesn't know how to react in the moment. There's like a mob circled around him, like, call the police, like, let's arrest this guy. I don't know. I'm happy to see that there is seemingly a further investigation here. I mean, the guys won hundreds of thousands of dollars competing in these events. Like, I probably have more questions than answers. You need to go on Captain CJ's boat and get the lowdown.
I know, right? Imagine a Conduct Detrimental charter with CJ.
Probably the audio would be horrendous on the water, but pictures are probably good. That'll take us to our final topic of the day. Before we do that, our podcast is sponsored by Orr, Horgan, and Flengy. Those are our friends over in Nebraska. They are an all-purpose law firm, anything and everything from NIL. I haven't spoke to them, but maybe they'd be interested in a divorce case. I know they have some personal injury cases over there. But again, our friends Orr, Horgan, and Flengy over in Nebraska, our newest sponsor of the podcast. If you have any questions, we do have a lot of Nebraska listeners, but if you do just have questions in general about starting up a law firm, I've been talking to my friend over there, Tom Horgan, pretty regularly. The firm is now, I think, about 2 months old. They now have a website. They have a fancy logo. If you're just looking, and Tom's about my age, maybe he's a year or two younger, and started up his own firm. So again, we are all things sports and law, but we do want to give advice to young lawyers trying to start a practice. So yeah, Tom's a good guy on all fronts. So happy to connect you. Or Horgan and Flengy. So this topic, normally we do college sports stuff in this particular topic, but Tom Brady once upon a time went to Michigan. He's a pretty good quarterback at Michigan. That's our college time. For this particular topic, again, hopefully Tom forgives me that we're not talking explicitly about college sports for this. The story was too good to pass up. This is I've done this twice. Tony, you're going to laugh. I saw the Free Britney stuff. One time I just posted on Instagram and I wrote #Free Britney, and I put like one emoji, and that had like 5,000 likes, which was not a normal amount of likes.
Being an influencer, wow.
Well, I know, like, listen, I'm a sports guy.
You have your finger on the pulse.
But I saw this Brady thing, and I'm like, I don't need to say anything else. Screenshot of the Brady page 6 post from the New York Post. That's all we need to do. And wouldn't you know, that was another post that blew up, at least on my end. So Tom Brady, the GOAT, greatest quarterback of all time, has hired a divorce lawyer, as has Gisele Bündchen. We can get into the breakup, but listen, you're talking about hiring lawyers, talking about a sports and an athlete, one of the greatest of all time, kind of have to cover it. Tony, Steph, who wants to take first dibs at the latest on this story?
Actually, I'll jump in because, first, to quote the great Andrew Brandt, there will be lawyers, and more so in a situation like this. I think that there's a lot to dissect here. I think one of the most interesting headlines related to the story actually just came out by TMZ, where apparently Gisele Bündchen has threatened multiple times. This isn't just like a first-time occasion, but multiple times has threatened to separate, even divorce from Tom Brady over football. So this, according to TMZ, from sources close to Gisele. So we can only assert that likely she was probably upset with potential long-term health implications that could be associated with him playing football. Certainly, I think his retirement and then unretirement may have been perhaps a ploy for him to potentially save his marriage, but we really don't know. But I will say, certainly because I am the IP professor, I feel like I need to chime in on this topic. We do know, if you have been following Tom Brady in his career, obviously, given the success he's had as an NFL athlete, with it comes athletes doing what they typically do, which is they create brands. And the TB12 brand has been something that he's really curated very closely with clothing and with a health line associated with it. Naturally, because there's a pending divorce at play here, I would love to be a fly on the wall to find out how this is going to affect at least the IP implications associated with his brand. Naturally, I wonder, did he sign a prenup with Gisele before they got married? Would his creation of his brand, TB12, be deemed a marital asset under the course of the marriage? And does that mean that there has to be some type of even split in profits as a result of that? Is his company going to be the exclusive trademark owner still of TB12, or is that going to be shared with Gisele? So a lot of questions that I think come up certainly from a trademark point of view with this type of story. But yeah, this is definitely going to be really interesting to follow, especially in light of the NFL season already underway.
I'm going to make this point very quick. And again, when debating if we were going to cover this, I don't want the show to be the TMZ show, but Tom Brady hiring lawyers, like Tony, you've addressed it very well. There are some very important legal things here. One that I wanted to address very early on, right? Gisele Bündchen is one of the few people in this world that is debatably, I don't know the exact numbers, but I know how to look up net worth or general net worth online. Gisele seems to have a higher net worth, 400 million, than Tom Brady, 250 million. So again, just interesting to point out. So we're talking about prenups, but right, who needed the prenup here, right? What were the premarital assets? I think it's certainly very important. And then, obviously there's kids to be dealt with here. It's probably a different topic for another time. My wife, Rachel, is friends with a very prominent family law attorney. So I was debating having her on, but she, maybe she'll listen to this and she'll yell at me, but I don't think she knows anything about sports. So I didn't want to make this like the family law, custody law, maybe at some point if the Brady case gets there. But for now, I think we can talk about some high level stuff. So Steph, I'll give this to you, right? I don't know, right? The retirement and unretirement was pretty public, right? Brady retires on February 1st. When does Brady unretire?
March 13th, he unretired. So not too long after.
Okay. So give or take, I think it's about 40 days. So Steph, you're, I guess, I feel like you're a pop culture person, just like Tony and I are.
Yeah.
Don't you think that that's an important decision point? There were rumors Brady's unretiring. He had to take time away from the team. Remember, he stepped away and he goes, I'm 45 years old. I'm man. I have things to do. There's a lot of speculation about why Brady unretired, what he was doing, why he stepped away from training camp. But I think that's all relevant to these divorce proceedings.
Yeah. 1,000%. You know what else I think is a little bit relevant is these rumblings have started to come out, and the Bucs have lost their last two games against the Packers and the Chiefs. They're playing the Steelers on Sunday. Let me just say, if the Bucs lose to the Steelers, I'm willing to bet it all on the fact that there is a divorce coming ASAP.
Absolutely.
Because
and you lose to Kenny Pickett, may I add? Okay.
Yeah, Tom Brady versus Mitch Trubisky.
Sorry,
God, that's a tough matchup.
So yeah, I don't know if there's that much more to add on this between Brady and Gisele. We'll keep an eye on it. I mean, it's sad to see, but we got to follow these stories. So we'll see what comes of it. It's not the first athlete and certainly won't be the last to have a very high profile, high net worth divorce. But we'll see what comes of it. But we've covered stories from assault to cheating scandals to collective bargaining. So yeah, there seems to be a lot of attention being paid to these divorce papers being filed. And obviously we'll keep tabs on it. But we didn't want to go an episode without covering it because enough people tagged us in it and said, can you guys at least speak to some of these issues that we should be paying attention for in the next couple of days? So Brady, obviously back to work. Gisele, seemingly looking like she's going to go back to work. So got to factor that into the marital estate and people's future earnings. Okay, maybe we'll say Brady might be playing another year now. Maybe that's our bold prediction on the pod.
And remember, he has a Fox deal waiting in the wings.
There we go.
That's
Very
a good
important.
point.
Still has a payday either way.
Okay, so guys, I don't have anything else to add. I think you guys did a wonderful job. Tony, Stephanie, anything else to add on any of the stories that we covered today?
No, nothing on my end. I think it's obviously we've covered a lot in terms of all the legal implications associated with these stories. And I think it just further cements that sports law knows no boundaries. That's for sure.
Yeah, it really does show up literally everywhere, from chess to fishing to now Tom Brady's pending divorce, or who knows what's going to happen. But, I guess I'll say go Bucks because I don't like the Steelers. And hopefully, he gets another win. Maybe that'll help his marriage out. Maybe Giselle's just a little bummed he's not playing well. Who knows? But I don't know. We'll find out.
Okay. Thank you to both of you. So to close this week's episode, as we have made it a tradition on the second episode of the week, we have back the returning champion, the undefeated.
Good to be back. Good to be back again. Another week, another day that ends in Y, another winning ticket. I mean, the sun rising in the east and Conlon Farrell cashing tickets are the two things you can count on in this lifetime. Okay.
Don't get cocky. Do not get cocky. 3-0 is a big deal, but let's try to make it 4-0. Reminder, anytime Conlon appears in the podcast, it is usually, just like it is this time, sponsored by Better Edge. And to Better Edge, they are in the App Store. Use our promo code CONDUCT. Again, get $20 free on sign up. And as Conlon and I were talking, sometimes you can take advantage of some line movements. You will see sometimes if you're sharp, right? If you're paying attention to where the line is moving and there is a square you can take advantage of on the site. Remember, you are competing against individuals, not the house. The house always wins. Dummy square bettors, no, they do not always win. Head to Better Edge and use our promo code CONDUCT. Now, Conlon, I'm going to give you the floor. You're like, can I give betting picks on the show? And I'm like, just don't get them wrong. Week 1, obviously didn't get it wrong, 1-0. Then to 2-0. Now to 3-0. Conlon, officially, you've kind of worn this title well as being like the Better Edge expert picker. 3-0. The question is, Conlon, can you make it 4-0?
Yeah, well, Dan, I'm going to try to do that. Kind of like, what have you done for me lately? Well, let me do this for you lately. Let's go to the NFC North, a Bears-Vikings matchup. Minnesota playing host to the dreadful Chicago Bears. The line right now on Better Edge, you get the Vikings at -7. Stick it right there. Look, the Chicago Bears run defense is softer than a pack of gummy bears that has been left on the beach for 6 hours. Softer than my belly, all right? The typical vintage Dalvin Cook game is this weekend. He's going to gash the Chicago Bears defense. Justin Fields is apoplectic. He's not very good throwing the football this year. Kirk Cousins isn't in prime time. All these things shape up nicely for a Vikings -7 cover this week.
Conlon, listen, you have fulfilled the promise. I said, be correct and be entertaining. Listen, all the best to you. I've been riding with you 3 weeks in a row. I am not dumb enough to make my betting picks on this anymore. So I'm going to put all the faith in you and all the pressure on you. So Conlon, here's to us, the show, Better Edge, and you, Conlon, going 4-0 as we head into the week. Conlon, I think that'll do it for this episode. For myself, Stephanie Weissenberger, Professor Tony Iliakostas, and of course, Dan Wallach. We will see you next time on another episode of Conduct Detrimental.